All right, good evening. It is February 10th already. The month is going by very quickly, and it's 6:30 p.m. and we're going to call our city council meeting to order. Myra, can we do a roll call, please?
Councilor Schwartz.
Here.
Councilor Roman is excused. Councilor Bonner.
Here.
Mayor Schwartzler.
Here.
Councilor Martin Willis.
Here.
Councilor Morton.
Here.
Councilor Ford.
Here.
Thank you.
We have several meeting minutes to approve, and I'd be happy to approve them as one. Yes, if people have had a chance to read those, any comments? No, any motion?
I move to approve the following minutes: special meeting 1/13/2026, the regular meeting of 1/13/2026, and the work session of 1/27/26.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Martin Willis and a second by Councilor Gilbert. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call, please.
Councilor Ford.
Aye.
Councilor Morton.
Aye.
Councilor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Councilor Bonner.
Aye.
Councilor Schwartz.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. We're moving on to visitor and public comments. We have a packed agenda tonight, so we're gonna keep it moving tonight, but we are happy to see that we have some public comments. Please, as a reminder, when you come up to the podium, to state your name and address for the record, and we do limit public comments to 3 minutes. First up, we have the Gate Youth Association, Ben Levita.
Start timer, so I get track.
That's all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Ben Bovita, the Gate Youth Association, 1501 Monmouth Avenue, Independence. Yeah, we just want to come share a little bit about what we do, if you're not aware. So, yeah, I'm the executive director of the Gate Youth Association. Our main outreach is the community center across from Central High School. So every day we see about 130 to 150 middle school and high school students. They come to the gate, they can play games, they all get fed a meal, lots of snacks. Our main thing is we want them to connect with safe caring adults. And so we've got some great staff from Western, some other young staff. And so yeah, we just wanna love on these kids, feed them, make sure they're taken care of. We do a lot of clubs, so we're really focused on workforce development. We do academic supports, we have tutoring as well. We have a mentor program, so there's about 30 kids being mentored by our staff. And then we're also like working on growing that with community mentors. And so really just trying to speak into these kids' lives and give them a positive experience and help them along. We also have a full summer program. So in the summer, we do 2 different sessions and we run about 15 clubs at a time and we see over like 100 kids for each of those. And so, yeah, just giving these kids an opportunity for a safe place and we've grown. So since 2001, when the building was built, most of you have been around long enough to see that. We've grown by 300% in 4 years. So we remember when we first had like 20 kids, now we're seeing 130 to 150 every day. We are a faith-based nonprofit, we are separate from the church. But like in the afternoon, that's not one of our faith elements necessarily, so like lots of different kids come from all different cultures and backgrounds. Yeah, so we've grown a lot. Last year we served 946 kids at least, as well as like 600 families, so about half of the teens in Monmouth Independence have come to the gate. And then, so we're gonna expand. We have our Expanding Hope building project. We've raised 1.9 million, and as of today, about another 50,000. We're trying to raise $200,000 locally, and we're about a quarter of the way there, which is super exciting. We're hoping to break ground in May, so we'll be putting in for permits in the next few weeks, hopefully. As far as that goal, we're gonna add on some spaces just to, right now we feed the kids in the gym, we wanna get them out of the gym so they don't wear a volleyball with their food, and just different things like that. We're gonna add some offices and then some classrooms, which will allow us to run our clubs and stuff, so. Yeah, I don't know how much time. You have 37 seconds. Anyway, yeah, we have a local board of about 9 members, so the ministry was birthed out of First Baptist, but now we have representation on the board from lots of different churches, board members from around. It's definitely something bigger than First Baptist could do and first imagined, right? So, we got some great staff, there's about 6 of us full-time, and like I said, we partnered with Western as far as the work study program. WU actually has its own mentoring program, and today some of those mentors came with their students to hang out at the gate after they did academic stuff. So anyway, we're just excited to continue to pour in, and of course, we're always looking for people just to support, financially, volunteer, and just be aware and champion the gate. It's pretty cool to have this grassroots community center as part of our community.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate all the work that you do for the community.
Yeah.
Next, we have, I believe it's Edie Patrick. And Chef.
Hi, everyone. Edie and I are the two grandmothers. Her real name is Aida, but people have trouble pronouncing it. And this week I got a letter from Tina Kotek. I guess some of you were on the list as well, and I noticed our mayor didn't sign it. It was in support of some things that we're gonna read in a statement here. And I wanna give proper credit to Aida because she actually wrote this. We published it about 2 weeks ago, but we both thought it was a good thing to read to you tonight so that you know how the two grandmothers feel. Okay, it's a statement for Trammart News composed by the two grandmothers. We believe all our residents in our community. We believe all who live here are entitled to due process. We believe all who came here looking for a better life and contributing to the community in a positive and peaceful way should never have to walk in fear. Treatment that makes our residents feel unsafe is unfair and inhumane. We believe we should uphold the designation welcome community that the city adopted several years ago. We believe that we should be able to speak out in support of that designation, which was bestowed on the city by elected officials. And by the way, I did ask our mayor for a comment a few weeks ago and there was no comment. I also asked the Hispanic liaison and he didn't respond either. So the two grandmothers are.
Thank you, and just as a point of clarification, the letter that's being referenced, that was signed by several of the mayors, so 31 of the 241 mayors signed that letter. I put out a statement on social media, as well as emailed it to people if anyone's interested in that. I am in support of the intent behind that letter. I do think it's very important for us to have a community that is safe and welcoming to all of our residents. There was put it this way, a very quick turnaround on that letter for people to sign that. So I hope people will have a chance to read that letter and know that I am fully in support of making sure our community is welcoming and safe. And we have Jennifer McMullen.
Hi, Jennifer McMullen, 6440 Corvallis Road, just down the street. I'm here to speak in regards to the issue that was addressed at the last council meeting. A city ordinance to limit some businesses in town to the benefit of other businesses in town. And I just want to remark that I heard a lot of, or read in the record that a lot of the concern was that we have to protect our small businesses. And I would like to remind the council that all businesses in town are our small businesses, and valuing one business or another shows a type of favoritism that has been reflected in many decisions made by this city over the years, and particularly some of the businesses that were rewarded by having their business desires placed in city rule are businesses that have benefited from support of the city in city events, to be favored vendors, to be placed inside of festival boundaries. And it saddens me to see this continue after some of us have spoken previously about the decisions that the council makes and how they impact other businesses. I also own a brick and mortar business in this town, the Tap Station, that survives on food carts. I have a building that cannot support a kitchen. And that building has been called an anchor of the downtown space. And yet the council continues to make decisions that favor other businesses in town. So I am under no illusion that I am in a place among the folks who work in the city to be considered favoritism. I understand that our business's unwillingness to give up land to eminent domain without fair compensation has placed a target on our back. And I can see that reflected consistently in decisions that are made. But it's not just us, it's not just one small family and our small family businesses that are impacted at this, but it's other people in the community who want choice, who want variety, who want places to go. And if we want to build a community where people stay here in town to dine, to shop, to recreate, then we need to provide a variety of spaces for them to do that. And creating rules that limit what people are able to do in this town doesn't benefit anyone except the people who own businesses that are not being limited. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Reports and presentations, I think in the interest of a very long agenda, we are going to bypass some of those. And I just have one quick remark, and it's that session is, the legislative session is started up in full force. So we have been meeting with all kinds of our legislators to make sure that our interests are known to them. So we're working on behalf of the city to get our line in hopefully the funding requests for our community. With that, we are going to jump right in to Mr. Gilbert for OLCC annual liquor license for the oh, sorry. Unfinished business. Oh, sorry. I tried to skip ahead way too fast. You were gonna be so excited, you're gonna leave a little bit early. Sorry. We do have a big item first, the unfinished business with the second reading for Council Bill 2035 dash.
Perfect. Hi there, everybody. In your packet is the second reading of the mobile vending code that you discussed at the last meeting. There was a public hearing held on that last time. Following the public hearing, you folks passed a first reading of the ordinance. The second reading is now before you. Are there any questions of me? Yes.
So there are some folks that have put, made substantial investments in properties in order to have pods. P45 has made the investment, about $100,000 is my understanding, to have 5 spots. Under the limitation ordinance, are they guaranteed to retain those 5 spots that they have paid STCs on?
Yes, that's how we envision this moving forward, is that folks that have approvals for their spots would be allowed to retain those spots. So as we discussed last time, P45 has 5 permitted. There would be 7 total allowed within the downtown area.
I guess I have a question or a follow-up clarification on that, because I believe we also discussed there's nothing preventing a new building owner from putting in an 8 spot downtown. Right, and then it becomes sort of a lottery system, no one who would pull. Right, if someone left a spot, what that would look like.
Right, that's where it absolutely is gonna get challenging, is if P45 only has 4 of or parallel 45 only has 4 of them ever full. And there's, say, 6 in downtown, and someone wants to put in the 7th, are we gonna then how does that exactly work? And that we feel like we can address more as an operational issue, hopefully moving forward. But yes, that will absolutely be a challenge.
Well, I'm sorry, that was really my question.
Yeah.
Does the owner at parallel 45 maintain in perpetuity 5 spots, and if one person moves out, they still retain 5 spots.
That is how we would envision using this ordinance as written, yes, absolutely.
Councilor Court had a question.
As you know, Mr. Randall, there's been a lot of conversation about this decision that we made last time. I just wanna say for the audience, people listening, we only heard from one business owner on this issue. I talked to the planning commission chair today in detail about the fact that they didn't make just a recommendation to us on this and that we were seeing this for the first time ourselves. My feeling is I don't wanna see a whole downtown full of trucks. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to see that necessarily. But is it a better position to take saying that we have X number of pieces of real estate that can accommodate a truck rather than limit the number of trucks that we have downtown? Cause I'm sure there's only so many places you can put a food truck. And do all the things that you have to do with electric and water and everything else. Does that make any sense at all? That we limit it that way instead of trying to say we only want 8 trucks or 7 trucks in downtown?
I mean, I think you're right that naturally food trucks will locate in certain areas. They will not locate per se along the street where buildings are close together and close to the street and everything like that. That being said, there are some vacant lots on the periphery of downtown that could accommodate something like a food cart pod. I think having a limit forecloses somebody to do a food cart pod that on a lot like that entirely. So I don't know what the best approach is with this. We think we see merits both ways. Fundamentally, we have not seen an oversupply of food trucks in the downtown to date. We see that naturally they sort of seem to come and go, right? We had one just recently that put us to perhaps the highest number that we'd ever been. And they lasted for less than a week, right? They were permitting a new space, Robin's Roost. And they had that space permitted, all that sort of stuff, and they realized that did not work for them, so they ended up leaving. I do think it sort of naturally balances itself, kind of, but I do see the reasoning for establishing a limit at the same time, so.
I think where I'm leaning toward is a limit towards property versus a limit towards number of trucks. And I think when we reach capacity, whatever that real estate will allow, then any new truck would have to go outside the downtown area. And I live off Gun Club Road, I would love to see some food trucks at Central Plaza, but
So when you're, I think I understand what you're saying, so you're essentially saying like a limitation on the number of pods in downtown, not.
You tell us how much real estate is available to set up a truck appropriately, according to city code. And if that's 7 pieces of property, then that's the number of trucks that can be in downtown.
I don't know that we can set a number on this letter. One.
I'm just saying the number of spaces, I'm not necessarily saying that.
I feel like that's somewhat challenging, just because I think that you could configure things in a number of different ways to actually make it work. I do kind of think that.
More, just let word.
Yeah, sorry, real quick. I think what I'm kind of hearing from him is you know, in theory, any vacant space downtown could be made to serve, to site a
We
food
could
truck.
preclude parking lots, we could, I mean, parking spaces, we could preclude the streets. You know, themselves, but
Yeah, so yeah, but now we're getting into a completely different way of regulating this versus what the original ordinance was proposed as. I think we'd have to kind of step back to a pretty early stage in this to sort of say, okay, let's rethink how we're gonna identify and regulate, you know, sort of these properties in the way that you're talking about. I think then ultimately, we still would be sort of putting a number on, okay, well, these three properties, you know, are suitable for hosting food trucks, and so these are the only ones that can. Which if that's the way you wanna go, I mean, I guess we could do it that way.
just one more point, Madam Mayor. The only reason we are discussing a number is because one order business came and spoke to us about that. Communicated with the city about that as well.
That's correct. And I will say the planning commission, and just like you're discussing here, the planning commission did discuss this a number of times. Where they ultimately came down, it wasn't that they didn't want to weigh into the recommendation. They essentially said that we don't want to weigh in and try and establish what this number is. Partially because they didn't feel like they should set a number. That was part of the reason why the planning commission came to that decision. It wasn't that they were negligent at their job. They talked about it a number of times and they said, we don't feel comfortable setting a number for this.
And where you are right now, you do not have to stick with that number, right? That this is your time to determine what you want to do going forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's important to reflect on some of the conversations that's happened in the community since we had our council meeting. I went back and reviewed planning commission minutes. There's some feedback I got from the community around their decision. And I've actually become pretty convinced that any way we try to regulate this would be pretty arbitrary. So I actually think we should be focusing on the original intent of the regulation, which is about health and safety, environmental issues, and let the market dictate what the businesses can and cannot do. I worry about staff time in this enforcement and our ability to treat businesses fairly. I appreciate business owners who have spoken up, and I appreciate Councilor Martin Willis for saying no to give us more time to think about this, because I think we were really eager to be responsive to businesses who took the time to come to council and give us feedback. And I think originally I was moved by the fact that our city planner reached out to businesses and didn't hear negative feedback. Or community members, and so I appreciate the community has clearly communicated how they feel, and I think we should be taking a relook at this. So thank you, Mayor. I know that wasn't a question, so I appreciate it.
And I do wanna just, for the record, we did have 2 businesses ultimately that reached out and participated in the process. So I think that's important. In fact, they sent a letter as a couple days ago, so I do hope that people have a chance to read their testimony as well.
Thank you, Mayor. I have thought about this quite a bit, this whole issue, and I see that it comes down to a 2-pronged situation where one is about the numbers, but the other one is about the permitting, the health and safety, and the capacity for a business to be able to have a food truck in a manner that matches all of the city requirements. And I find myself very much in agreement with the previous speakers. I think that the bigger issue is the health and safety zone and making sure that the public is being protected in the most adequate way that we're able to do so. And also the business itself will eventually drive the correct number of places. I am not a food truck fan, but I'm not a representative of all generations, and I know that more people think about that and appreciate that than I do. And I will be happy to give away my personal preference is to make a better decision about this.
I just wanted to echo the same thing, last time we met and we voted, I really wanted to focus on the first part of the conversation and not the second. Putting a number on it at the time, it was literally just an arbitrary number, it wasn't based on anything that we had from the community, there was no real good reason to attach a number to it. And I'm glad that we got the chance to relook at that, just because it needs to be based on something, and I can definitely get my head around putting safety, some regulations in place to control what we're doing, but putting a number on it just doesn't make sense.
Any further questions of staff?
Yes. Alex, I can do this in the form of a question.
Okay.
So should we decide not to move forward with our second reading, could staff perhaps be directed to come back with a condensed version that includes part one, health and safety regulations, minus the numerical cap?
Yes.
Question mark.
Yes, Council President, in fact, we could most likely, since we have a long agenda, I could have one staff member go up and print off a new, I think it's Exhibit C, bring it back down, you could hold this open and put it to the end of the agenda. And this would, you would no longer go forward with this one, but you would start with the first reading on, I think it would be 8.0 or something, whatever that agenda number is, item number is. So yes, that can be done.
I think that's a good idea. I love that idea.
Me too.
Agreement on that? Do we need an actual, so do we probably need to close out?
I think you ask for a motion, if there's no motion, then it dies.
Do I have a motion?
No. I propose that staff,
No,
We're killing this.
do we have a motion for the second reading?
The appropriate answer would be no.
And if we don't do that,
instead of saying, oh, I should have said no.
yes.
Hearing none, motion does. Thank you. So, thank you. We're like, no.
And we'll bring this back to you as item number. What is that, Myra? 7.8, 8.0, what is that?
Read it on you.
So we're bringing that back, the,
After the 7.9 or 7.10.
okay, whatever number that is, Myra, if you could note that, we'll be bringing this back. There has been a significant amount of discussion on this particular item, in particular the number. So bringing it back with that change, there will be no additional information most likely received. So we're just gonna go ahead and move it forward or back forward on the agenda and bring it back to you.
Thank you. All right. Now we get to go on to new business. No, should go, we were ready for you.
Good.
Yes.
So, which one's first?
Just to go.
It's the annual.
Oh, there, yes, yes.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. In your packets, you should have an annual liquor license review for all of the business independents that are seeking renewal of their annual liquor licenses. I'm not gonna spend a bunch of time on it, should have your packets, are there any questions about any of this? It seems like every year the numbers just keep going down and down and down as far as how many instances we have in independence throughout the year. And if you look on the second page, I think we're down to 5 OLCC related calls of service for the entire year of 2025. Where we drew a connection between police response and an over service or alcohol related issue with one of our establishments. So that's incredible because it just keeps going on every year. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you for that. Right. The action item?
I move to recommend approval of the annual liquor license renewals upon receipt of city fees.
Second. We have a motion by Councilor Court, a second by Councilor Soares. Any further discussion? All right, we'll roll call.
Counselor Source.
Aye.
Counselor Water.
Aye.
Counselor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Counselor Morton.
I,
Counselor Ford.
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes.
I like this, nobody ever had an issue with alcohol in the city. Second one is it's just an Oregon liquor license application, for Siltai. Essentially, it shows change of ownership. It's really not. There were two owners prior, those owners have separated. One of the owners has continued with the business on her own. We did a background and everything looks great. Just like I said, there's absolutely zero changes other than one of the owners has left, to pursue other ventures. So are there any questions about this?
Here's a good question. So you're required by law to do an investigation when the ownership changes as in some of the other states.
Yes, well, OLCC requires that they go through a complete application process again, even if one of the owners leaves the other states, yes. And partially, I think it's because the LLC also changed. So the registration with the Oregon Secretary of State's office was like a co-ownership of an LLC. When one pulled out, the current owner started their own LLC, so it's a different business essentially, behind Siltai. So it's the same as kind of not. So yes, OLCC require her to go through all the hoops to maintain control of the business sharing.
Sounds like something with the spirit.
Any further questions? That's an action item.
I move to recommend the approval of the liquor license application is received.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Morton, second by Counselor Martin Willis. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Ford.
Aye.
Counselor Morton.
I,
Counselor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Counselor Water.
I,
Counselor Source.
Right.
Motion passes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, that's agenda item next goes to Kenny.
Good evening. So before you, you have resolution 26-1647. This is an update to the city fee schedule. This is something that's been brought before council in 2 work sessions previously. So not a lot has changed. This is the updated draft based upon input from staff with the work we've done and then the direction received by council. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have a communications plan to communicate with our community around some of the changes? Now that we're charging for some services that we previously did for free.
If this passes, we will.
Awesome. Thank you.
Further questions? You have a motion?
I move to adopt proposed resolution 26-1647 and reference sufficient. Second.
We have a motion by Counselor Martin Willis and a second by Counselor Core. Any further discussion? Your roll call?
Counselor Source.
Aye.
Counselor Water.
I,
Counselor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Counselor Morton.
I,
Counselor Ford.
Aye.
All right, thank you, motion passes. We're breezing through this, our schedule. Next up, Mr. Baker.
Moving slow, so we'll buy for a little time there. We have before you the award for Corvallis Road Waterline Project. We got a really good turnout on this for bids. There were 13 total. We did receive the okay from the EPA to go ahead and award this. There's a whole kind of background paperwork process. They verified everything looked good and we're ready to award that contract.
And I will just add that the reason that we had to work with EPA is this was a CIP from Salinas. And so it is a federal grant that we received to complete this project. And this is, I believe it was 880,000 that we received, and, that's why they had a little bit of say in what we're doing, is it's their money working on this project.
Any questions? We have a motion.
I move to award the construction contract to Wickwire Contracting LLC in the amount of $750,160 and authorize the city manager to execute the contract and any change orders within the approved budget.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Martin Lewis and we'll give the second to Councilor Ford. Any further discussion? All right, do a roll call.
Counselor Ford,
I,
Counselor Morton,
And I'd like to say my favorite statement in this whole piece of paper says, primarily funded by federal funds.
Counselor Martin Lewis,
Aye.
Counselor Ballbear,
Aye.
Counselor Source.
All right, motion passes. Thank you, it's exciting to get started with this. Next up also for you, Mr.
And just one last note on that Corvallis Road water line. We did make sure to put the construction ending at the middle of June, so Corvallis Road wasn't under construction during 4th of July. So,
Thank you.
next one is for Hoffman Road. We're ready to accept that road now. There was a drainage issue out there. The county addressed that. We monitored it over the winter and it's flowing, so there's no problems. We did an annexation. We requested certain roads and held off on Hoffman because of that issue that needed to be addressed. When the county did their transfer to us, they included all of those streets, including Hoffman. So the only piece that we have to do now is to actually accept it. We've accepted all the other ones. This is just the cleanup of the last piece.
Any questions?
I move to approve roads resolution 26-1646, accepting jurisdiction of Hoffman Road within the urban growth boundary from Polk County.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Cord and a second by Councilor Boisvert. Further discussion? Do a roll call.
Counselor Source,
Aye.
Counselor Ballbear,
Aye.
Counselor Martin Lewis,
Aye.
Counselor Morton,
Aye.
Counselor Ford,
I,
All right, thank you, motion passes. And now 7.6, public hearing.
Mayor, we have a couple of options. We can run up and get Fred and bring him down. We could take a short break and see if we can help him get things done quickly.
I have a request for a 5-minute break.
5-minute break it is.
Me, Mr. Evander, Equiner, up next. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, we're good to go. Okay. Now we're ready.
Perfect. Can you please read the script?
Yes. This evening, we have a public hearing on AX number 2026 2026-01 to consider the annexation of 46.7 acres east of 13th Street and the rezone of the property to mixed density residential MS. City Council will make a final decision on the proposal based on the complete record, including the testimony received at tonight's public hearing. These proceedings will be recorded. This hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the city and state of Oregon. This is a type 3 legislative procedure. At the beginning of the public hearing, staff will present a staff report that identifies the applicable substantive criteria from the city's developed code, comprehensive plan, and or state of Oregon statewide plan rules. For anyone wishing to speak, we ask that you use the speaker cards that are provided. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair and you must state your name and address for the public record. Before we begin, does any councilor wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest in this matter? All right. I will now open the public hearing for AX 2026-01. The date is February 10th, 2026, and the time is 7:16 p.m. And may we please have a staff report?
Yes, you may. Hi there, everybody. My name is Fred Evander. I'm the city planner here at the City of Independence. And I am here to present tonight on 46.7 acre. I think that's right, 46.7 acre annexation and rezone of property just east of 13th Street. Now, Myra, if you could flip to page 123 of the packet, that would be beneficial. Because that really shows you where this annexation is proposed as part of this application. You will note to the west is the Southwest Crossing development and annexation. That's just across 13th. Just directly to the north of this property is St. Patrick's Church, and then just to the east of that is where you see Brandy Meadows, especially on the south portion. So that's the Brandy Meadows subdivision, just to orient folks. If you can scroll down just one more page, Myra, we can just sort of get a zoom in a little bit and you can sort of see this. It's a very long and skinny lot. It's in the Southwest Independence concept area. And as you can see, all of the properties in this Southwest Independence concept area are zoned MX, and this is proposed to be zoned MX as well. Now, to process this, we have a couple of things that we're supposed to do. One of them is evaluate it in terms of our annexation standards, and those are in subchapter 14. Now, we don't always use our annexation standards for new annexations because they only apply to the Southwest Independence concept area. Since this is in it, we then look at those standards and make sure that the master plan submitted by the applicant is consistent with those standards. Now, some of the things that our annexation standards are looking for in particular are a mix of residential units. This absolutely does achieve a mix of residential units. You will note that in pages 114 and 115 of the packet, where it sort of breaks down what they're anticipating doing in terms of number of units for the entire development over the scope of this development. Now, they're proposing something like 505 total units over the entire site. This will not occur all at once. What will happen is this will occur in multiple phases with things like multifamily at the north end, moving down through things like cottages and single family homes, and then eventually on the south end, having more single family homes and cottages at that south end. So again, a mix of units is one thing that specifically we're looking for. Also, we are specifically looking for the public space that's getting created as a result of this development. The Southwest Independence Concept Plan establishes a vision for the South Fork of Ash Creek that's a series of trails along the creek, and it doubles as recreation, stormwater treatment, all that sort of stuff, a natural amenity for the development. These folks are absolutely doing that as well as part of this master plan submitted. You will note on page 112 of the packet, Myra, if you could get that, and then maybe make sure that folks could see that. You will note that the South Fork of Ash Creek is in the middle of that drawing, and they're proposing protecting the entire floodplain of the South Fork of Ash Creek and using that both for things like recreation, but also things like stormwater treatment. They are also calling out a park space directly at the intersection of Chestnut and South 13th Street, which you will note there, and that is mirroring the location shown in the Southwest Independence Concept Plan. In addition to all of those things, some of the things that I will call out, and I put a little sticky note in my thing, so. Where'd I put my sticky note? I apologize. Another thing that they're doing is they're clustering the density in the north end of the site. And while the Southwest Independence Concept Plan shows that, and you can see that sort of in the depiction of the Southwest Independence Concept Plan on page 92 of the packet. What you will note is the Central Talmadge Plan kind of modified that and said specifically, we want the density in the north portion of this site, partially because it would be close to the Central Plaza Shopping Center, and it would be close as well to the trolley route. And so providing density along the trolley route to essentially enable folks that might need a ride, the opportunity to get a ride. This would place the density close to that trolley route. The final thing that I'll note, just with some of these Southwest Independence Concept Plan principles, are the things like the public streets. Now, you will note that the Southwest Independence Plan calls out the South 13th Street as a major street. It also calls out Chestnut as a major street going through this site, and this applicant in their master plan is showing those streets as well and sort of designing the development around the principle of those streets. They're also proposing local streets at South 12th, and all that sort of stuff. So I guess in short, this proposal is absolutely consistent with the Southwest Independence Concept Plan. I go through that bit by bit in my staff report, and I just wanted to touch on the key sort of principles. So you can see what they're doing there. Again, the mix of housing, the density in the north side, the major streets, the pedestrian corridors, including the Ash Creek corridor, all of those principles are shown in the Southwest Independence Concept Plan adopted in 2012, and these folks are absolutely doing that. Based on that, we did go ahead and look at the annexation and the master plan submittal in terms of the statewide planning goals. You will note all of my comments related to that in the staff report. I'll just call out a couple of things real quick, though, about those statewide planning goals. One is land use planning. We have done a lot of planning for the area around this site. We did the Central Talmadge Plan, which identified the north part of the site as an important place to have some mixed some higher density housing. We also did the Southwest Independence Concept Plan, which really did lay out the road layout. We have used forethought in the design in sort of creating the principles for this site, and these folks are absolutely coming in with a design that reflects the work that we've done. Also, I'll call out goal 5 and natural resources, scenic and historic areas and open spaces. We have evaluated this for goal 5, specifically looking at things like wetlands in the riparian corridor. When we expanded the growth boundary in 2009, we did not do a goal 5 analysis. At that time, we adopted a policy that says Independence will compile an inventory of wetland and riparian corridors and complete the goal 5 process when adequate information pertaining to location, quality, and quantity of wetlands becomes available. In the interim, an assessment of riparian and wetland resources and appropriate measures of protection shall be applied at the time of plan amendment and zone change approval. Since we have not done that detailed goal 5 analysis, what we are using in the interim is appropriate measures of protection in the interim, right? To do that, we have used we have evaluated this using what I would call a belt and suspenders approach. Among the things that we've considered are our neighbor, Monmouth, who has done a local wetland inventory to achieve goal 5 with adequate measures. And looking at Monmouth's local wetland inventory, we have realized that I should step back, I'm sorry. A local wetland inventory. So with goal 5, what they want you to do is protect significant resources, right? They want you to identify and protect significant resources, and that includes wetlands, riparian areas, historic resources, all that sort of stuff. We have never done that level of analysis to identify, okay, what is significant? Based on that, with this application, we feel comfortable saying, okay, we haven't done that, but we can look at a context exactly like ours. We can look at our neighbors to the west. They have the exact same types of soils. They have the exact same sort of stream corridors. They have the same sort of wetlands as we do. And looking at that and studying their local wetland inventory to see what are significant wetlands, we can see that all of their significant wetlands are along the creeks, right? They're all along the creeks. Based on that, with the applicant's suggestion and statement that they're going to preserve the floodplains along the creeks from development, we think that already they are isolating the majority of the significant wetlands that might exist on the site from development. That makes sense. Further, requirements at the state level related to middle housing require things like 100-foot setback to protect riparian resources that are significant riparian resources. They're already doing that. They're protecting more than 100 feet because of the protection of the flood zone. Additionally, things like the FEMA HICM, the pre-implementation compliance measures. There's already federal requirements that if you're in that floodplain, you're having to do additional mitigation. They're well aware of that. They're staying out of that floodplain entirely. And then lastly, there are wetland requirements naturally, and we'll be working with DSL for any impacts that they do have to wetlands. So based on all of that sort of stuff, I realize that I'm going into detail about goal 5. Part of it is we want to show that we've done our due diligence with goal 5. This is not a willy-nilly decision. We have looked at what is likely, what are likely wetlands on the site, and feel comfortable saying these folks are already protecting the bulk of the significant wetlands that are likely on the site. Anything that I should say else about that? Okay. All right. And then lastly, the last thing that I'll note is the goal 12. The transportation element. The transportation planning rule. This site was evaluated for this level of development as part of our transportation system plan. It has been considered for this development. Based on all of that sort of stuff, we went ahead and we did all of our normal noticing processes. We sent this to the DLCD more than 35 days ago. We posted the site, we sent it to neighbors within 250 feet, all of that sort of stuff. We did receive one comment today. It is on your desk. Other than that, though, we feel comfortable recommending approval of this application. We think that this is absolutely consistent with our vision for the Southwest Independence Concept Plan and the Central Tonnage Plan, and with all other city planning requirements. So are there any questions that you have of me?
I was just going to make the comment that for further validation and support, you might check in with Ash Creek Water Control District, because they've done several studies on this.
Mr. Aranda, if your intent was to demonstrate you did your due diligence, I think you succeeded in that. I have two kind of trivial questions. Can you differentiate between a cottage townhome and a single family home?
I can, but you might want to ask the applicant what exactly that they're anticipating with that. I think that what their intent is to sort of capture the idea that that those spaces would be a mix of units, some of which would be on the smaller side, so.
And maybe they could respond to this as well, affordability.
They could go ahead and respond to that as well.
So that cottage community or communities that we're planning, they're smaller homes. We're envisioning 1,200, 1,300 square feet at a more attainable price point, which fits missing middle housing goals. Not car-based, so it's not a community where you're driving in a community and you see fronts of garages. They're centered around a green space to form a stronger sense of community in place and pride in ownership. That's really in really simple terms what the difference is.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any further questions?
One that I focused with. So I'm seeing in the comments here and in the rezoning that is currently farmland. And in my day job, I deal with concerns from folks all around the state. So I guess my assumption is that the property owner has elected to no longer farm that and has agreed to sell to a developer for development. So there's like no surprises that, oh my gosh, this farmland is now houses. To whomever best can answer that.
Quick comment, so one of the owners is here, but.
Oh, thank you.
This is a true partnership with the owners, with the three owners of the property. We have a shared vision and shared goals for the type of development, which is a little different than we've seen in the past. We like something with more of a sense of community. We're really well aligned on where we want to head. with the owners. And they'll stay in the project through, we're not buying the property from them, we're truly
okay.
partners.
Thank you.
So that's really-
Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I don't. We've been working with this group for about a year and a half now. And it's been a very exciting project for me because I want to give back a type of development that will be very good for the community and will be a beautiful project that will represent different levels of affordability. So that's what's exciting.
Thank you. Counselor Source?
We say that again into the microphone so folks online can hear. I worry about people not being, I'm sorry.
It's no problem.
Hold on, I got.
Okay. Will you repeat your question?
I appreciate it.
Well, I guess,
You know,
I guess,
it's the way-
yeah, and I guess one of my concerns is during the day, I worked at the Capitol, and we hear a lot about disappearing farm.
Yes.
And so I guess my concern was this wasn't a situation where somebody came in and offered some poor struggling farmer a bunch of money to buy their land. So I'm really excited that you as the owner are
Yes.
here. And if you could kind of share, I guess, your impetus, your motivation.
Well, it hasn't been used as farmland for, I have no idea, maybe 50 or 60 years. And I'm excited about it because I want to see, my goal is to see a beautiful development that is affordable, that families can use, they can recreate in some of the areas, and people can go from something like a multifamily property, perhaps to home ownership. And so that's what I'm looking for. That's why we teamed up with them. Because they have the vision and they've done it in other places. So they know what they're doing and we're very excited to be in the project. We're not just selling it. We're gonna stay on board.
Okay, thank you for clarifying, I appreciate it.
Thank you for your flexibility to repeat.
Any further questions?
Good. I think this is for you, Fred. I think, you know, in the plans, when I was reading, and you kind of alluded to it in your conversations around how we're meeting the goals from DLCD. But is this gonna be a trail that will be publicly accessible to folks outside of the housing development?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So, I mean, what you can see with that trail along the South Fork of Ash Creek right there, and you can see it on the diagram. Is something that is getting built. There's a portion of it currently in Brandy Meadows. It will eventually connect north into Inspiration Garden. There will be a trail as well on this side. Now, you'll be able to cross over Chestnut Street Bridge and get between the two. Ultimately, I imagine a series of sort of loops that folks will be able to walk around in the area. It should be a very nice amenity, absolutely.
Thank you. And are we working with development team to think about how we can be supportive of them building that out to the best of their abilities within what makes sense to the project? To think about credits or kind of partnership around that SDC on that?
Yeah,
I don't
no.
wanna like say
Yeah.
we're gonna give everything away, but I'm just saying like.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see that they've already, they're on their master plan, they're calling out that trail corridor. They're also calling out the dedication of the floodplain toward that use. That's something that again, we required Brandy Meadows to do that just as basically a condition of development. And so we would anticipate something similar. The trail itself might get some SDC credits, but that's a whole bunch of like getting into the nitty gritty,
Thank you, Fred. I just wanna state for the record, I'm not saying that won't happen. I'm seeing the daggers with What I am saying is I think we need to incentivize partnerships that want to work with the community to make the larger community a better place for all of us to live. And I appreciate that the owners and the developers are here saying that they want to be in partnership with the community to make a better place for all of us. And so I want us to make sure that we're thinking strategically and how we're good partners to that project.
It's, yeah, exactly, and I think that these folks too. We have had a number of conversations about this development and everything, and I think one thing that I've sort of emphasized is that trail amenity along the South Fork of Ash Creek is gonna be a very high quality amenity. In the future, it's gonna be a very nice thing. And so I've encouraged them to think about how to orient their development to maximize the value of that for their development, essentially to have houses that that showcase that, maybe have front doors oriented to it. As opposed to sort of presenting the backs of houses and tall fences toward that amenity. It will be a very high quality amenity when it is eventually done.
Thank you.
Sounds like a great concept.
Do we have any testimony? Anybody signed up for testimony? So we can get that there, do I officially have to read it? Okay, we'll be official.
Madam Mayor, I guess I have one more question. Sorry, Fred, I think this is to you. Communication around, the neighborhood, I know you said you're doing the notices. Have you had capacity to engage with the Catholic Church in that community about the impact potentially on the church and the community, because there definitely will be more neighbors there, right? So yeah.
We have not, we sent, they were on the mailing list for the project.
Okay.
The notice board that we put out for this is right next door to their property, like, I mean, it's literally right next door, so. I'm sure that they heard about it, we did not hear anything back from them about the application.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Just to be official, we do wish to hear from everyone who is interested in this proposal. Please limit your comments and questions to 3 minutes in length, and remember to state your name and address for the record. Do we have any other testimony? All right, hearing none. Does staff have any other things to add or to respond to based on? No testimony, but anything else? Last call.
No.
All right, thank you. I now declare the record and hearing closed.
Perfect, then I think the next thing on your agenda is actually adoption of the annexation, is that correct? That's correct.
I move to read the proposed ordinance, Council Bill number 2026-03, the annexation and rezone of 46.7 acres along South 13th Street, the text of which is in the council packet for the first time.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Martin Willis and a second by Councilor Morton. Roll call please.
Councilor Source.
Aye.
Councilor Boisvert.
Aye.
Councilor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Councilor Morton.
Aye.
Councilor Ford.
Aye.
Thank you.
I move to read the proposed ordinance, Council.
I gotta read the title, sorry.
Please hold your offense.
Annex three designate and rezone 46.7 acres along South 13th Street, tax lots 1100 and 2100 of map 8.4.29. That's it.
I move to read the proposed ordinance, Council Bill numbers 2026-03 for the second time by title only.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Walker and a second by Councilor Court. Oops, sorry, this.
Councilor Court?
Aye.
Councilor Gordon?
Aye.
Councilor Martin Lewis?
Aye.
Councilor Walker?
Aye.
Councilor Soares?
Can I ask a quick procedural question? Please, City Manager West? Yes. I have a quick procedural question. In the absence of one counselor,
Yeah,
is that you really unanimous?
no. And it just hit me that the cannot vote unanimous because the way that it is, oh, thank you, Sean.
Yes, when you have your light bulb, my light bulb triggered as well. We are a little bit different, and the way it is written is when one counselor is gone, it is automatically a no. So that's when I turn to ACM Irvine, just to confirm that that light bulb was correct, and it is. So what we'll do is move forward as if we have one no, and this will come back for a second reading at the next meeting. And maybe someday they'll change this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I know, but. Thank you, we're excited to see this.
Appreciate it. We'll be back.
Yes. We need to address that in, where would we, is that in the code?
I believe that is in the charter, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If it's in the charter, there's gonna take an entire vote of the community. If it's in the code, we can do a change. Thank you, Sean.
If it's in the code, we can do a change through our processes. I don't recall which it's in.
Can we possibly convince the owner to be back here at the next meeting so that she can address the fact that she's on board with this and the fact that it hasn't been used as farmland for almost 60 years? Because that may be an issue.
We can of course ask Fred to see if they can do that.
But it should also, I mean, public record and.
Right, but,
recorded,
If there's any questions or clarification, nice to have her. We'll certainly ask.
Okay. Right, I forgot about that unanimous, unanimous, and seeing one is an automatic, is a negative. Okay.
How's more those have had longs?
Yeah, at the same time, it was, so many views and
Yeah.
Okay, what's next? All right. We are actually, sorry, I gotta pull up your journal. Yes. All right, next up, we have 7.8 public hearing. Mr. Fisher, I believe this is.
It's actually,
Oh, sorry.
it's gonna be Fred and I.
you have the script. And
Yeah, so I start with the script.
Good thing people are here. This evening, the council will hold a public hearing on legislative amendment number LA-2026-01, revisions to the independent spend standards in IC 74-020A. These proceedings will be recorded. This hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the city and state of Oregon. This is a type 4 legislative procedure. At the beginning of the public hearing tonight, staff will identify the applicable substantive criteria from the city's comprehensive plan and or state of Oregon statewide planning goals. For anyone wishing to speak, we ask that you use the speaker cards provided. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair and state your name and address for the public record. Before we begin, does any counselor wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest in this matter? Great, hearing none. I will now open the public hearing for LA 2026-01 at 7:49 p.m. And please have a seat.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. So I'm gonna start here, Fred and I are tag teaming this, but I'm just gonna walk you through the staff report and then talk through the findings. But so we're starting with kind of what the problem is, and We're here because this year, the city set about to better secure, some of our critical facilities, our water and sewer facilities. We wanted to make sure that they were more safe from acts of vandalism, terrorism, anything that might potentially happen to them. And so to do that, we installed barbed wire fences around, the wastewater treatment plant and also our drinking water facility, which has several wells, pumps, and a large water tank. In some places, new 6-foot barbed wire fences were built. In other places, there was existing 6-foot tall fences there. And those existing fences were topped with barbed wire. So after that happened, 2 neighbors of the South Wellfield property objected to the placement of barbed wire around the facility for a variety of reasons, including that the barbed wire was added to an existing fence in a residential zone and was less than 8 feet above the ground. So given that complaint, we set about reviewing the existing fence standards in our development code. To basically see what the situation was. And so what we found was really fundamentally the current development code does not effectively address fences for government uses. Government uses are allowed in pretty much every zone. But there's different fence standards depending on the zone. So the Independence Development Code allows barbed wire in commercial and industrial zones, but it requires them to be at least 8 feet high. No standards exist for any kind of a fence in a public service zone or an airport development district zone. And governmental facilities and uses are also allowed in residential zones, but they have to meet residential fence standards, which means a 3.5 foot tall front yard fence, unless it's see-through, and also no chain link or barbed wire is allowed in residential zones. And then there is an additional issue where some city facilities are actually located in rights of way. So there is no zone for a right of way. It's like a platted street or right of way so it doesn't really have a zone and can't be zoned. So next we were looking at construction of 8 foot tall fences to make sure that it's at least 8 feet tall. And that presents a couple of challenges. We talked with a building official. He said that 8 foot tall fences, there's enough potential shear force from wind that we actually need an engineering analysis to build them. And of course, taking an existing 6 foot fence and putting extensions or additions onto it to make it reach 8 feet. Those things exist, but they're, again, you need an engineering analysis, and critical to the engineering analysis is knowing what the footing is like, so how much concrete is in the ground, and of course that is very difficult to determine from an existing fence. Then we did essentially an informal look around Independence just to see where are facilities that have barbed wire and how tall are those fences. And I'm going to say up front, this is a non-exhaustive list. We think we did a decent job of finding places, but I'm sure we missed some facilities. But as you'll see in the staff report, there's currently 8 existing city facilities with 6 foot barbed wire fences. Public facilities with 6 foot barbed wire fences, including the airport, the Polk Well up by the sports park, the Riverview Park pump station, the River Drive well, the Oak Street sewer pump station, the 9th Street sewer pump station, the Monmouth Street reservoir. And then also the city of Monmouth's well and water tank, which is located off of 4th Street. We do have 6 examples of 8 foot tall barbed wire fences in the community. One city use, which is Polk Wells 2 and 3 over by the Independence Sports Park. And then the other 5 are in the industrial zone for various industrial uses. And then there's also on the private side, we found 10 examples of 6 foot tall barbed wire fence, largely in the industrial zone with some commercial uses as well along Monmouth Street. So given these findings and the fact that the city is going to continue to build new infrastructure facilities, including the new drinking water treatment facility that we've been talking about, we're proposing to create a new standard for public use a new fence standard for public service uses, regardless of the zone where they are located. And we are proposing that new fence standard would allow a 6 foot tall fence topped with barbed wire. The proposed language is in the staff report. I'm just going to read it real quick because it's fairly short. government service structures or uses, notwithstanding the standards above, fences enclosing municipal or government service structures or uses, including but not limited to a reservoir, water tower, pump station, airport, bus terminals or station, fire station, transformer station, or substation, may be constructed of chain link. The fences for which there is no height limitation, it must be at least 6 feet tall if topped with barbed wire. And so this language is intended to address the issue at the South Winfield, as well as the lack of standard for fences associated with public uses. You know, we did look at, you know, does it make sense to just rezone all of our public facility properties to the public service zone, which is intended for public uses, but that still wouldn't address the issue of our properties that are located on rights of way, because you can't zone those. And, you know, as I described, you know, the issue is, you know, a 3.5 foot tall front yard fence doesn't make sense for, you know, public water facility or a public sewer facility. You know, these things are important to be protected. So we took this to the planning commission. They generally agreed with the intent of what we were trying to do. But they added a additional recommendation for a 15-foot setback. So if there was a 6 foot barbed wire fence, that it'd be set back 15 feet. When the property is adjacent to at least 3 residential parcels. And that was in conjunction with essentially a second fence. And their proposed language is also in the staff report, and it just essentially added a couple of sentences saying, provided that where a barbed wire top fence abuts 3 or more existing residential parcels, a second fence that contains the barbed wire shall be set back at least 15 feet from the property line. So that was the planning commission recommendation after staff's initial proposal. So what I want to do is talk about the considerations that went into staff's proposal, and then I'll talk a little bit about the planning commission's recommended addition, and we'll go from there. So first thing we looked at was the safety of facilities. You know, as I described, you know, these are important, expensive public facilities. This is our drinking water service. This is our wastewater treatment service. You know, if somebody, you know, hops the fence and goes in there and starts a fire, or just decides to start breaking things, you know, what have you, they can do a lot of damage and they can cause a lot of problems, you know, water backups, you know, failure of water pressure, you know, lack of fire flow, you know, all of those things can potentially happen. And so that was really the intent behind putting barbed wire up on top of on the surrounding fences, was to discourage people from being able to enter these properties. You know, a determined person will get in, but we're trying to keep people out as best we can. Same thing as, you know, we lock our car doors, we lock our front doors, you know, for that exact reason. You know, somebody may still bust the window, but at least they're gonna have to break the window, not just lift the handle and open the door. You know, some folks have suggested that we could simply use security cameras as an alternative to putting in the barbed wire. But we just don't see that as being practical in many instances. So for example, the South Wellfield, it's a large property. There's 5 different wells, each which has its own building and a pump station. And then there's also a 1.5 million gallon reservoir, which has about a 319 foot circumference. You know, you would need at least 7 cameras and probably, you know, a good bit more of that to really effectively cover the entire property. But the fundamental problem is, you know, cameras aren't typically monitored. And so, you know, having cameras there would be great in terms of potentially being able to identify somebody who did something on the property, but it's going to do nothing for actually preventing people from accessing the property and doing something there. So if anything, you know, cameras should be used in conjunction with, you know, something like a barbed wire fence to physically prevent people from coming in. You know, the airport is also a good example of, you know, kind of why fences are used. You know, they're trying to keep people from getting onto the runway, people and animals from getting onto the runway, which is why they put a physical separation with barbed wire, you know, between the runway and the open space. So issues were also raised about the potentials to safety for animals and people from barbed wire fences. You know, and it's an understandable concern, but you know, realistically, you know, barbed wire fences are not inherently dangerous. You know, there's a lot of cities that allow 6 foot tall barbed wire fences, including city of Dallas, Canby, Salem, Eugene, and Springfield. You know, there's a lot of places that this is allowed in part or in whole in the community. And if barbed wire fences were dangerous, you know, I think it's likely that there'll be a whole lot more cities that don't allow it within their city limits. And it is true, you know, there are some cities that prohibit barbed wire within their communities. City of Monmouth is actually one. But if you go look at their public facilities, you're gonna see 6 foot tall barbed wire fences surrounding their public facilities. And I think that's a really important point to make. And so, you know, we did do an informal poll of city staff and other folks, you know, police, emergency folks to say, hey, have we gotten any calls, any complaints about people getting injured on a fence, animals getting hung up on a fence, and really nobody had any recollection of something like that happening. Folks also were concerned about visual impact of barbed wire fences. You know, the potential that might obscure views from the neighboring property. But you know, realistically, the chain link portion of a fence is going to be more sight obscuring than a barbed wire portion. You know, there's an image here in the staff report to really kind of illustrate the point that the chain link actually has quite a bit more kind of metal to it than a barbed wire fence in terms of obscuring views of neighboring properties. And then lastly, you know, we did look at the difficulties of adding height to a fence to make it 8 feet, and I already kind of discussed that. The challenges of trying to either add on to a 6 foot fence. Realistically, if there's an existing 6 foot fence and you want to put barbed wire on it, you're probably going to have to remove the fence and build a new 8 foot fence. So given those considerations, you know, staff recommended amending the city's development code to allow public agencies to allow barbed wire to 6 foot tall fences to protect government facilities. Now, that was our initial recommendation. As I said, Planning Commission offered a recommended addition to create a setback, 15 foot setback, when there's at least 3 or more adjoining residential parcels. They established a threshold of 3 residential parcels for the standard because they realized that, you know, some city facilities like pump stations are very small, and you know, it's going to be hard to do a 15 foot setback if you've only got, you know, 40 foot of width to work with. And the facility is already there. But, you know, they spent a lot of time talking about this. You know, they heard from some folks, spent a lot of time discussing it, and ultimately passed this recommendation with a vote of 3-2. So looking at that recommendation, you know, as staff, we've got a few concerns, issues that we have with it. Again, outlined in the staff report here. You know, first off, you know, how would the setback address parcels versus residential units? The language used was parcels. But, you know, for example, so that could be single family houses. Okay, that makes sense. But what about an apartment complex? What about a manufactured home park where there's multiple units within one property, one parcel? You know, how would that get addressed? Also, what's considered abutting? You know, is vacant land zoned residential? Would that be considered an abutting residential parcel? And then the other question would be, you know, where does that required setback relate to the entire fence? So, for example, on the south well field, you've got a total of 6 residential parcels on 3 sides. And so does that mean that the 15 foot setback would apply entirely, you know, all the way around the property? Does it only apply on, you know, parcels that or sections that are abutting a residential parcel? Does it only apply as far as it abuts the residential parcel? So if, you know, for example, on the south side here of the south well field, you can see there's about half of that south property line, there's a road adjacent to it, not a property. So would the 15 foot setback only apply where that home parcel is abutting? Then also, you know, should the distance that a home is located from the fence be considered in the determination of what's abutting? Out where the drinking water facility is going to be built, south part of town, it's currently rural. There's a couple of farm homes out there on either side. So you've got 2 residential parcels abutting on either side, and each one has a home, but it's pretty far away. You know, but you know, should that be considered or should it not be considered? And then most importantly, you know, how would the non-conforming use standards affect existing fences on property lines? So, you know, this is really kind of the fundamental problem where if the setback requirement was put in, then we've got a lot of 6 foot tall barbed wire fences currently around city facilities that might have to move. You know, so for example, the reservoir on Monmouth Street, which is surrounded by a 6 foot tall barbed wire fence and is adjacent to several manufactured homes in the Hazel Glen Mobile Home Park. assuming we said that it was a residential units and not a residential parcel, that would then become non-conforming. A non-conforming use means that essentially you can't repair, replace, or expand that use. So the fence would be fine as is, but if a tree falls on it, if a car drives through it, if it rusts and falls apart, then we're supposed to meet the setback requirements, the current code when we rebuild that. The problem being the tank there is only 10 feet from the property line, so we're not gonna make that 15-foot setback. And then, of course, as the community continues to develop, we may run into situations where we build a fence on the property line around a facility because it doesn't meet the abutting residential criteria. But then later it develops. So again, the drinking water facility south of town, the property immediately to the north has annexed into city limits and is eventually proposed for development of a subdivision. If and when that happens, if the city has already built a 6-foot barbed wire fence around the property, that fence would then become non-conforming and then have those same problems. Similarly, in the southwest part of town, for example, where these guys just annexed, there's going to need to be a sewer lift station down there to serve that whole area. And it's entirely possible that the lift station is going to have to get built before the houses do. And then if they plat a subdivision around it that has 3 houses adjacent to it, then we've got a problem. And then lastly, just kind of the fundamental question about 2 fences. The planning commission was really looking exclusively at the south well field when they were talking about this issue. And there was an existing 6-foot chain link fence, which we put barbed wire on top of because we thought it made sense in terms of being less costly, we'd save money. And so they said, 15-foot setback, leave the existing fence. And so you build a second fence with 15-foot setback. It has this written right now, if we were going to build a barbed wire fence on a property adjacent to 3 residential parcels or more, we would need to build 2 fences. One on the property line and one with a 15-foot setback, and that feels excessive. And so for all those reasons, number one, we need to create a standard. It's, there needs to be a standard created. Number 2, we think that standard should be include a 6-foot tall barbed wire fence without the buffer. We understand why the planning commission made that recommendation and why they weighed the considerations of the adjacent residential properties. But it's going to be too challenging to implement on the various city properties that we have. And so that's why our recommendation remains the same, that we just implement the code change. So that, real quick, I'm going to just kind of jump through the actual staff findings. They're pretty straightforward. Mostly it has to do with process. So goal 1 says a participation, make sure that we're getting people involved. So we did provide notice in a number of different ways. This is all in the staff report. Planning commission, they discussed it in a work session. They also did have a public hearing on January 5th. And of course, you all are having a public hearing as well. So we already met that goal. Land use planning goal, it's really to encourage efficient land use, maintain land use designations appropriate to character of independence and to meet future land needs. So the existing fence standards and zoning designations of independence, they don't effectively regulate government, as I've been saying, government facilities. And so with these new standards, what we're looking to do is really kind of better regulate government facilities, government situations. So we're saying that goal is also met. The goal 11 with public facilities, to plan and develop a timely, orderly, and efficient arrangement of public facilities. Again, these fences support the city's capital facilities efforts by ensuring that our taxpayer investments are well protected and secure. So we say that goal is also met. And then lastly, the goal of urbanization, to provide for an orderly and efficient transition from rural to urban land use. There's a lot of plans and policies in Independence that seek to provide urban services, including water and sewer within city limits, and that limit the extension of utility services outside the community. The keys to the success of the services of and this vision of growth inside city limits is that the assurance that the facilities are well protected and able to continue functioning. So again, we're we're saying, look, it's the securing of these facilities is important to the overall urbanization of the city, because if we don't have effective water and sewer service, then we cannot effectively urbanize within our community. And then lastly, just looking at our Independence Development Code provisions, this is largely just sort of the administrative stuff. This is a type 4 action, and we have addressed it in that appropriate way in terms of both notices and hearings. And I think I'm gonna kind of wrap it there. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Mayor. This is a little difficult because nothing you said doesn't make any sense. All of it makes total sense. Makes sense that we want to secure and harden our essential services, protect vulnerable soft targets in our community. My question is, on a specific situation where we have community members complain, what was the level of communication before the barbed wire and up on the fence? Because I think the heartburn I have on this a little bit is people bought into a property understanding that there was a soft facility there that the city owned, that eventually there'd probably be some hardening of it, because common sense implies there probably will be eventually. But there hadn't been yet, right? And so all of a sudden, according to the complaintee, that changed. So my concern is really about, again, communication with our community members and making sure that they bought and invested in a property, that they get a notice and some understanding of what's changing. So just a conversation about that, because again, the hard part for me is everything you're saying makes total sense, and of course we need to do this, but I guess how we do it matters too.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I mean, the reality is we did not communicate this ahead of time. I mean, this is a city capital project. We don't typically provide notice for those types of projects. And so we did not communicate in any way with the neighbors.
Thank you. Thank you for the.
But I do think, that's something that in the future, I think we could take a look at, but to me, then where do we stop with that? And that's the kind of the counter to that. I understand the communicating part of it, but when we're trying to predict every single potential land use adjacent to somebody purchasing a piece of property, I think it puts a burden on staff in terms of trying to communicate that. So I do think we need to be thoughtful about who ultimately bears some of the responsibility to that. Is it the real estate agents who are selling the house that are making people, hey, please be aware that you're purchasing next to a city owned property? I don't have a good answer for that, but I could see where it's a slippery slope.
Mayor,
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanna make it really clear that I don't blame the staff in any way about this. I hope the staff is hearing this as a just constructive feedback in the future. And the example that you used, City Manager Irvine, I think is a great one about a potential pump needed for this subdevelopment we were just talking about. Maybe the conversation should be, as we're developing, we harden those potential, places early so that it's just part of the plan, or at least the plan is communicated, because the thing I worry about is perception and assumptions of community members that our community, our government doesn't care about how they're impacted by change, right? And this is a very important change, because we need to harden those facilities. And I had the opportunity, years ago when our wonderful public works director just started, he gave us a tour of one of those facilities, and I was shocked at how we could just walk right into a potential soft target for someone who wanted to, cause panic or harm to our community. So absolutely, but it's also how we communicate to our community also. Thank you.
And has there been any other concern expressed by any community members about the erection of this fence?
We've heard from two people, two neighbors.
I have concern when we start doing sort of one-off changes to something about setting a precedent for every other single project. And I'm trying to imagine that predicting, I guess, even today, like we annex or in potentially annexing in this property and trying to guess what's residential, going to be becoming residential, all of that, versus having a standard that is applied consistently throughout. To me is much stronger.
I definitely appreciate that, and I think that that's why, like I said, like, all the arguments make 100% sense. So yeah, absolutely, I love the fact that we're gonna uniform the standard, I love the fact that our team pointed out all the places where this can be impacted, so our community can look and say, alright, like, these are coming if they're not already there. That's the communication that I hope we continue. And it's not to do more busy work for our staff, it's to ensure that our community understands why we're doing things and people don't. I think people are losing faith in all institutions of government, and anytime we can just try to communicate and fix that a little bit, it behooves us. Thank you for letting me.
Councilor Baldwin?
I was just gonna say, you can't always predict, the future. I mean, 9/11 changed a lot of things for a lot of people, and so those are just things that we're gonna have to grow with, as a community. But I think the least obstructive thing we can do is at least have an awareness that said that we will protect our soft targets, at least with a 6-foot fence with, with the barbed wire. That seems like an easy fix.
I think the argument that Councilor Source is trying to make is the argument between push and pull communications. Yeah, that's been a long time argument, you can put all the information out there in the world, nobody will come pull it. I don't think we have the staff to support constant push of information. It's out there in minutes, it's out there in agendas. I had a conversation with city manager Wetzel the other day about wanting to be able to find ordinances online. I can't ever find them. Maybe we could do something to facilitate that process a little bit better. But I don't think we're ever gonna figure out the right solution here. I think we learn as we come upon these situations and we try to do better going forward. I just wanna say, comment, I said last week twice, just wanna say that. And Mr.
I noticed
Fitzgerald was
that.
not quite on it for.
All right, any further questions of staff? Gonna be official, testimony, we wish to hear from everyone who's interested in this proposal. Please limit your comments and questions to 3 minutes in length and remember to state your name and address for the record. Do we have any? All right, very none. Any remaining questions?
One, so as we move forward to consider that, are we considering this with the 15-foot setback or with that?
So the language proposed in the staff memo that with the council bill, that was the original city staff proposal with no setback. And obviously you guys always have the option to approve an amendment, or not do anything.
All right, any final questions? With that, if there's no objection, I will now close the record in public hearing. This will be an action item, and Myron, can we have the right?
I move to read the proposed ordinance council bill number 2026-01. To adopt LA 2026-01 in full as the text is contained in the council packet for the first time.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Morton and a second by Councilor Core. Further discussion?
I'm just making sure that we are understanding that that's about.
All right, that will do a roll call.
Councilor Source.
Aye.
Councilor Water.
Aye.
Councilor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Councilor Martin.
Aye.
Councilor Moore.
Aye.
And Councilor Roden is not here, therefore it's an automatic no.
So we will bring it back to the next.
I think she still reads her.
Yes.
Yes.
An ordinance amending Independence Development Code section 7 there zeros. The civic standards for accessory uses to establish standard for fences associated with governmental facilities and declaring as effective date. We'll bring it back to the next meeting.
All right, thank you. Now we have our added. Yes, our edited. Ordinance.
Yes, so, I went upstairs and you will note that, the ordinance in front of you is the amended. Ordinance, I'll just call out the couple of changes, so when you look at ordinance number 1628. That page that I gave you, the front and back sheet, you will note there's only one change on that from your packet that says. Council Bill number 2026-05 is a new council bill number, not the old one, which was in your packet of 2025-08. So we'll get rid of the 2025-08 one. And then for exhibit C that you can see in your pack that I handed out. On page number 2, section 8-419. Mobile vending license for approved mobile vending locations. The number was at C there, and you will see that C is no longer present on page 2. And so, those were the two changes that should have been there. Just so you can see where that was in your packet, it was on page 49 of the original packet. Just if you want to see it, Mary, you could even pull up page 49. Just so everybody could see it. The
original packet.
The original packet. And so when you look at C there toward the bottom of the page, you see that's the same bit of text right there, and that has been removed from this draft. So given that, you folks could make a motion to and I think that the city manager has a draft motion if you would like.
We have a volunteer.
I move to read the proposed ordinance Council Bill number 2026-05, an ordinance amending the standards for mobile vending units, the text of which is contained in the council packet for the first time.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Martin Willis, a second by Councilor Morton. That one was called Mary. Any further discussion? All right, roll call please.
Councilor Ford.
Aye.
Councilor Morton.
Aye.
Councilor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Councilor Water.
Aye.
Councilor Source.
Aye.
And Councilor Roden is absent, so that's an automatic no.
But I'll read the title. An ordinance amending the standards for mobile vending units and the municipal code and development code. Bring it back next week.
All right, all right. Do we have any council announcements? Are council announcements?
Yes. I hope you've all had a chance to walk around downtown and see all the hearts that are up on darn near every single light pole. And it keeps increasing every year. The money that is raised by the Independence Downtown Association for the Hearts goes directly to pay for the flower baskets that are coming in May. So thank you to everybody who got it. And we have Dallas participating this year too.
Spreading the love. Spreading the love.
I'd just like to say, even though the holidays are over, my wife and I are still collecting coats for the coat drive. We have a location here at my office and over at the, grocery shop.
I have a cool announcement, so I wanna give kudos to our wonderful museum manager, but our museum is hosting the Blue History Club Friday. And we're gonna have 5 students over there helping our museum manager catalog textiles that the city has owned and never had the ability to catalog. And the students are very excited about having some applied learning opportunities to do what they've been learning in the classroom. And I just think it's a wonderful example of partnerships where our university can work with our community for the betterment of whatever. So I just wanted to give a shout out to City Manager West and her wonderful staff to make those opportunities possible for our students.
And Mayor, I have one as well. This is Councilor Source reminded me of something. Thursday night at 6 o'clock at Valkyrie, the Heritage Museum Society will be hosting a talk remembering Val Sets and eating with Ron Rose. Donation at the door, and please take advantage of the libations. They do have non-alcoholic drinks available.
All right, any further announcements? All right, with that, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Council.